On the morning of June 25th, 2023, Kansas City police responded to a chaotic scene that would soon be one of the city's most tragic events of the year. A mass shooting had erupted during a late-night house party. By the time officers arrived, gunfire had already stopped, but the damage was irreversible. 3 people were dead, 6 others were wounded, and one of the victims was the woman who was celebrating her 28th birthday that very night. Her name was Jasity Strong, known by family and friends as Jazz.
Cause this is my birthday, bitch, and I am 28. I will smack a big bitch. What that bitch wanna do? I'll send you right to the Lord.
She was a mother of 2, a certified nursing assistant, and an aspiring nurse. That night was meant to be a celebration. Instead, it became her final moment. The party, described by her family as a tradition called Club Mama's House, was held at a home near 57th and Prospect. It was a place where Jassity could dance, laugh, and be surrounded by friends and loved ones. However, the early hours of the morning brought gunfire, not just from one shooter, but reportedly multiple individuals. Police were called just after 4:30 a.m. Reports say that dozens of rounds were fired. Jassity was hit in the chaos and died at the scene. 2 others were also killed. Witnesses scattered. Paramedics rushed the wounded to local hospitals. Neighbors stood outside in shock. Jassity's mother, Tamika, received the call no parent ever wants. Her daughter had died on her birthday at her own party. In the weeks that followed, little information was released about who pulled the trigger. No arrests were made immediately. The investigation was ongoing. But the damage to Jassity's family was permanent. She left behind 2 children, one just a baby, a young daughter who will grow up without a mother who now raises her grandchild instead of watching her daughter chase her dreams. In response to the tragedy, her family took action. They pushed for legislation called Jassity's Law, aimed at stopping people from carrying guns to public gatherings in Missouri. They demanded accountability, not only for her death, but for the system that allows guns at house parties with no regulation. This is the story of Jasity Strong, how her life was taken, how her family is fighting back, and how her name is now part of a larger conversation about gun violence in America. Welcome to True Crime Diaries, the place where we uncover shocking stories, unsolved cases, and deep mysteries from the world of crime. From real events to breakthroughs in investigation, we break it all down so you can see what really happened. Before we begin, don't forget to tap the subscribe button. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? Drop your thoughts as this story unfolds. Your opinion counts. These are real people, real events, and serious lessons we must not ignore. Share this video with someone you care about. It could make a difference, maybe even save a life. Let's get started. It was a warm summer night in Kansas City. June 25th, 2023. A date that should have ended with laughter and dancing. Instead, it ended in bloodshed and heartbreak. That day marked Jasity Strong's 28th birthday, a milestone she never got to fully enjoy. Her friends and family had gathered to celebrate at what they lovingly called Club Mama's House. There was music, food, drinks, and love all around. No one could have imagined how quickly joy would turn into horror. Jassity was the kind of person people naturally gravitated toward. She had a presence that lit up any room, and her birthday was always a time to bring people together. This year was supposed to be special. She was proud of how far she had come balancing motherhood, working in healthcare, and studying to become a registered nurse. She had dreams, goals, and so much life ahead of her. But all of that was stolen in a matter of seconds. Around 4:30 a.m., just as the party was winding down, chaos exploded. Gunshots rang out, dozens of them. In total, over 50 bullets tore through the night air. People screamed and ran in every direction. Some ducked for cover, others dropped to the ground. It was confusion, terror, and devastation all at once. Jassity was caught in the middle of it. She didn't stand a chance. The music stopped. The laughter died. In its place came the sirens, loud, flashing, urgent. Police rushed in. Paramedics tried their best. But it was too late. Jassity was pronounced dead at the scene. She had been shot and killed during the party thrown in her honor. 2 other people also lost their lives that night. 6 more were wounded. What began as a celebration of life ended in tragedy. News of the shooting spread quickly. For many in Kansas City, it was yet another headline in a long list of gun violence stories. But for Jassity's family, it was personal. Her mother, Tamika, received the phone call that no parent should ever get. Her daughter, her bright, beautiful, hard-working daughter, was gone. On her birthday, the weight of that moment is something her family still struggles to carry. That night didn't just take one life. It shattered a home. It left 2 children without their mother. A 6-year-old girl who still waits for her mom to come home. A 1-year-old boy who will grow up only knowing her through photos and memories.
Family trying to prevent others from feeling their loss. Jasity Strong was a victim in last month's mass shooting at 57th and Prospect in Kansas City. Tonight, KSHB 41's Alyssa Jackson gave the mic to her family, all to hear about their hopes of amending conceal and carry rules through Jassity's law.
If you drive past 57th and Prospect, you'll see names in chalk marking the sidewalk and fence like Jassity.
She called me Mama Auntie Twin.
Jasity Strong.
She was celebrating her birthday.
And on that night, 1 month ago, Jazz did what they would expect.
She FaceTimed me, and I answered, and you don't know how happy I am. I answered because I wouldn't have got to talk to her. She said, "Mama, where your shot at?"
But Tamika Jenkins never expected what the next one would be.
They saying Jazz is dead, and we was like, "You lying?"
They realized she was caught in the crossfire of a mass shooting off 57th and Prospect.
There's never any action behind those thoughts and prayers. My Bible says faith without works is dead.
Which is why they took their pain to Missouri State Representative Richard Brown.
What we're doing right now is not working. We've got to do something. And the people of Missouri, they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so if the legislature will not act, we need to let the people use their power.
They're petitioning for Jassity's law that would amend conceal and carry laws at public events. Representative Brown says there's gun legislation he's been fighting for years.
Many of the legislators in Jefferson City, they will not budge to change these gun laws, no matter how many people die.
With a petition inching closer to 500 signatures.
Jassity's law should be passed.
Jassity's family says what didn't work in the past doesn't stop them now.
Our legislatures don't like the words gun control. The word control makes them feel like they don't have any power. And so we want to change the vernacular to gun responsibility.
In Kansas City, Alyssa Jackson, KSHB 41 News.
Jassity's absence created a ripple of pain that reached far beyond the crime scene. And sadly, hers is not an isolated case. Gun violence has become a cruel pattern across American cities, especially in communities that are often overlooked. Celebrations, family gatherings, and even quiet evenings are now interrupted by bullets. Why has it become so normal to read about another shooting? Why are young Black women like Jassity rarely given more than a passing headline? How many lives have to be lost before something changes? What would you do if it were your daughter, your sister, or your best friend? And more importantly, how do we keep this from happening to someone else? Jasity Strong was more than just a victim of gun violence. She was a daughter, a mother, a caregiver, and a woman determined to build a better life for herself and her children. Born on June 25, 1995, in Kansas City, Missouri, she was raised in a tight-knit family that supported her through every high and low. Her life wasn't perfect, but she met her challenges with quiet strength and an unshakable spirit. From a young age, Jassity showed a deep sense of compassion. She had a natural ability to care for others and often helped elderly neighbors or assisted her mother with household responsibilities. That caring nature would later shape her career path as she pursued a job in the healthcare field. She completed her training as a certified nursing assistant, CNA, and began working long shifts in care homes, tending to patients with patience, warmth, and empathy. She had 2 children who meant everything to her, a young daughter and a baby son. Every decision Jassity made was with them in mind. She worked night shifts, studied during the day, and still found time to be a present and loving mom. Balancing work, motherhood, and education was not easy, but she kept pushing forward, determined to become a registered nurse one day. Outside of healthcare, Jassity also had a creative side. She was passionate about beauty and makeup, and she used her talent as a self-taught makeup artist to bring joy to others. Her social media pages showcased her skills, and she often did free makeovers for friends and family. It wasn't just about appearances. She believed in helping people feel confident in their own skin. Her personality was unforgettable. Friends described her as loyal, funny, and full of life. She had a contagious laugh and a playful sense of humor that could lift anyone's mood. When she entered a room, people noticed, not because she was loud or flashy, but because she carried herself with quiet confidence and kindness that left a lasting impression. Though she faced hardships, Jassity didn't let them define her. She had experienced loss, disappointment, and a financial struggle, but she never allowed herself to give up. Instead, she leaned on her faith, her family, and her children for strength. Her dream was to eventually open her own business while working in the medical field, a future she believed was within reach. Family was everything to her. She regularly visited her mother, helped her siblings when they needed support, and made time for her kids' milestones, no matter how busy life became. Her phone was always full of pictures and videos of her children. She celebrated every small achievement and often shared words of encouragement with her friends who were also trying to improve their lives. Jassity's life was moving in a positive direction. Her CNA job helped her gain experience in the medical field. She had enrolled in nursing classes and was slowly building the foundation for a career that could support her family long term. Even when she was tired, she kept going. She wanted more than survival. She wanted success. Her story was one of growth, ambition, and resilience. She had overcome adversity and was finally beginning to see her efforts pay off. For those who knew her best, she wasn't just another young woman chasing a dream. She was the dream, a symbol of hope, strength, and determination. The tragedy that ended her life also cut short the story of someone who was becoming everything she worked so hard to be. Jasity Strong's name deserves to be remembered not only for how she died, but for how she lived. The early hours of June 25, 2023, carried a heavy stillness that hovered just before dawn. Jassity's birthday celebration had stretched into the night with music, laughter, and familiar faces filling the home on 57th and Prospect in Kansas City. It wasn't a wild event. It was a local gathering held in a family setting where people came to show love, not cause trouble. But somewhere in the shadows of that celebration, danger was waiting. The streets outside were quiet as many began heading home or resting after a long night. Inside, the mood remained joyful. People were dancing, taking photos, and enjoying one another's company. Jassity had changed into something comfortable and was seen laughing with her friends. There was nothing unusual about the atmosphere. It felt like a normal end to a fun evening. Then came a sound no one was prepared for: gunfire. Rapid, violent, and unrelenting. More than 50 shots rang out in seconds. The front yard, once filled with music and movement, erupted into panic. Some guests dove to the ground, others tried to run, and many screamed out for loved ones. In those terrifying moments, the house transformed from a safe place to a scene of chaos and terror. Jassity was hit during the initial spray of bullets. She collapsed before help could reach her. Emergency calls flooded the system as neighbors woke up to the sounds of screaming and sirens. First responders arrived quickly, finding victims lying in and around the property. There was blood on the sidewalk, bullet casings scattered near the fence, and shell-shocked survivors trying to explain what had just happened. 2 other individuals were also pronounced dead at the scene, and 6 more were rushed to hospitals with serious injuries. Many of the survivors didn't know who fired the shots or why. It had happened too fast to see anything clearly. Witnesses described the shooters as pulling up suddenly, opening fire without warning, then speeding off before anyone could react. The street was soon blocked off with yellow tape, flashing lights, and investigators working under street lamps. Family members began to gather, desperate for information. When Jassity's name was confirmed among the dead, the crowd fell into stunned silence. Some collapsed in grief. Others shouted in disbelief. The reality of the night settled in like a wave of sorrow over everyone present. Police worked to collect evidence, question witnesses, and review nearby surveillance. Despite the number of people at the scene, fear and confusion made it difficult to get clear answers. The randomness of the violence made it all the more terrifying. There were no known fights, no arguments, no warnings. Just a sudden storm of bullets that tore through lives and futures. Inside the home, birthday decorations still hung on the walls. A half-eaten cake sat untouched on the counter. Shoes, cell phones, and purses were left behind in the rush to escape. The scene was frozen in time, a snapshot of joy interrupted by violence. For those who had been there, the memory of that moment would stay with them forever. By the time the sun rose over Kansas City, the party had become a crime scene, and a celebration had turned into mourning. The neighborhood that had come together to honor Jassity's life was now grieving her loss. It was a tragedy no one could have predicted, but one that would leave scars far beyond that single night. What should have been the happiest day of the year for Jasity Strong became the moment everything changed, not just for her family, but for an entire community forced to confront yet another senseless act of violence. The morning after the shooting brought a heavy silence to the neighborhood. Would have been a lively home just hours before now stood still, surrounded by crime scene tape and sorrow. The sun rose over a street littered with broken glass, bullet casings, and unanswered pain. News crews arrived quickly, capturing images of a shattered gathering place and stunned relatives holding on to each other for comfort. Jassity's name appeared in the first official reports by noon. Her photo began to circulate on social media, shared by friends who couldn't believe what had happened. Many spoke of her laughter, her energy, and how proud she was to reach another birthday. For those closest to her, reality didn't come in all at once. It crept in slowly through shock, disbelief, and heartbreak. Her mother, Tamika, was one of the first to visit the scene later that day. She stood behind the police tape, holding a framed picture of her daughter. Family members placed candles on the sidewalk where Jassity fell. Flowers, balloons, and handwritten notes started to appear, turning the street into a growing memorial. Strangers drove by to pay their respects, even if they didn't know her personally. At home, Jassity's children waited unknowingly. Her daughter, only 6 years old, kept asking when her mommy would come back. The baby boy, just learning to walk, reached out for a mother he would never see again. Relatives stepped in quickly, trying to shield them from the details while figuring out how to carry the weight of what had happened. The pain spread beyond her household. Friends who had been at the party were now traumatized. Some had narrowly escaped the hail of bullets. Others couldn't sleep, haunted by the sound of gunfire and the image of their friend on the ground. Therapy services were offered by local organizations, but the emotional wounds ran deep. As funeral arrangements began, the community gathered to raise money for her burial and her children's future. Vigils were organized across the city, each one filled with candles, prayers, and voices demanding change. Local leaders made appearances, calling for action on gun violence, though many in the crowd had heard those promises before. The day of the funeral arrived with gray skies and hushed voices. Hundreds came to say goodbye. Jassity's casket, decorated in her favorite colors, was carried by tearful family members who never imagined they'd be burying her so soon. Photos from her life played on a screen, smiling with her kids, laughing with her sisters, applying makeup for clients. It was a celebration of life, overshadowed by deep grief. Inside the church, speeches were delivered by those who knew her best. Her mother's voice cracked as she spoke of her daughter's dreams and the injustice of her death. A close friend read a letter written to Jassity's children, promising to remind them every day how much their mother loved them. The service was a mixture of beauty and heartbreak, of memories and mourning. In the weeks that followed, life didn't return to normal. Her family adjusted to a painful new routine, raising her kids, managing her affairs, and navigating the empty space she left behind. Photos of her were placed in every room. Her favorite playlists still played during quiet moments, and her name was spoken daily. The loss of Jasity Strong became more than a personal tragedy. It became a symbol of what's at stake when violence is allowed to flourish. Her story continued, not through headlines, but through the lives forever changed by her absence. In the days following the shooting, the Kansas City Police Department opened an investigation into the deadly violence that claimed 3 lives, including Jasity Strong's. Detectives interviewed witnesses, collected shell casings, and reviewed nearby surveillance footage in hopes of finding leads. But as the hours turned into days, and the days into weeks, progress seemed slow and uncertain. Despite the number of people present at the scene, useful information was limited. Many guests had fled in panic, and those who remained were left shaken and confused. Witness accounts were inconsistent, and fear kept others from speaking up. As with many cases involving gunfire at large gatherings, silence settled over the investigation like a heavy curtain. The lack of clear suspects made it harder for police to pursue charges. Investigators publicly appealed for help, urging anyone with knowledge to come forward. Still, the phones remained quiet. Surveillance videos caught flashes of movement and car headlights, but not enough to name those responsible. No arrests were made, and no charges were filed. For Jassity's family, the wait became its own kind of torment. They struggled with the weight of unanswered questions and the absence of justice. Her mother often attended police briefings and community meetings, searching for updates that never seemed to come. The silence from law enforcement felt just as painful as the loss itself. Behind closed doors, frustration grew. Friends and relatives began to question why her case hadn't received more public pressure. The media had covered the story briefly, but then moved on. Other tragedies took the spotlight, while her name slowly disappeared from headlines. To her loved ones, it felt like the world had forgotten her too quickly. Her children, too young to understand the legal system, were left with memories and photographs. While the justice system stood still, life carried on for them in a house missing their mother's warmth. Family members stepped in to provide care and support, but they couldn't answer the one thing that mattered most: why no one was held accountable. Community activists and anti-violence groups continued to mention her name at rallies and meetings. Posters calling for justice appeared on light poles and bulletin boards across the city. Her story was included in public discussions about the rising rate of shootings, yet nothing moved her case forward. The sense of injustice wasn't just about one person's death. It reflected a larger pattern: cases left open, families without closure, and victims whose names faded as quickly as they appeared. Jassity became part of that growing list, her file sitting among dozens of unsolved cases that marked a city deeply wounded by violence. Despite the lack of arrests, her mother refused to give up. She continued to share Jassity's story with anyone who would listen. Interviews, community forums, and social media posts became her way of keeping the case alive. The search for justice transformed into a mission to protect others from suffering the same fate. As time passed, hope did not disappear, it changed. Instead of waiting for answers, Jassity's family began turning their pain into purpose. Justice might not come through courtrooms or headlines, but her memory remained a powerful call to action in a city still trying to heal. As the days turned into weeks with no arrest in sight, Jasity Strong's mother, Tamika, realized that waiting would not be enough. Her daughter's death could not be allowed to fade into silence. Fueled by grief and determination, she decided to take a stand, not only for her child, but for every family who had lost someone to senseless violence. From that heartbreak, the idea for Jassity's Law was born. The purpose behind the proposed law was clear: to bring stronger control over guns at public events, particularly at gatherings held in residential spaces. Tamika believed that people should feel safe in their own neighborhoods and that more needed to be done to prevent concealed weapons from slipping unnoticed into social settings. Her daughter's birthday party had turned into a crime scene, and she was determined to keep it from happening to others. With no legal or political background, Tamika started by gathering support in the community. She shared her story at town hall meetings and public safety forums. People listened. Some had lived through similar tragedies. Others feared they could be next. Slowly, signatures were collected and conversations began to take shape around reform. She met with local leaders, council members, and gun safety advocates. Some were hesitant, others more receptive. The legal challenges were many. Missouri's gun laws were among the most relaxed in the country. Changing them, even slightly, would require a major effort. But Tamika pressed on, driven by a mother's love and a burning need for change. Community groups joined her efforts. Flyers went up around Kansas City. Hashtags appeared across social media, calling for action. Jassity's name became a symbol not only of loss, but of possibility. What started as one family's grief grew into a movement. People who had never met Jassity were now standing behind her memory. News outlets began covering her efforts, giving voice to a campaign rooted in tragedy. Tamika was invited to speak on local radio and news programs, where she described her daughter's dreams and the pain left behind. She spoke calmly, but firmly, reminding everyone that this wasn't just a political issue, it was personal. Though no new law had passed yet, the momentum brought real conversation. It forced policymakers to acknowledge the holes in existing protections. It opened space for victims' families to be heard. Even in resistance, there was movement, proof that voices, when joined together, could shake the ground beneath lawmakers. In schools and community centers, Jassity's story was shared as both a warning and a lesson. Workshops were held to educate young people on the dangers of illegal firearms. Neighborhood watch programs received renewed attention. In her name, small steps were taken toward a safer future. Tamika continued leading the fight, even while mourning. She organized a yearly remembrance walk on Jassity's birthday, inviting families who had also lost loved ones to gun violence. These events offered more than just grief, they created unity. Together, they walked for peace, holding signs and wearing shirts with Jassity's face printed across the front. Though Jassity's law was still in its early stages, its impact had already begun. It lit a fire in the hearts of many who had once felt helpless. Through her mother's courage and the support of a grieving community, Jassity's legacy was no longer defined by how her life ended, but by what her memory could still achieve. Jasity Strong's story didn't end at the gravesite. Though her voice was silenced by violence, the impact of her life echoed far beyond her final day. In her absence, a movement grew, one that spoke not only for her, but for the countless other women and mothers whose lives were cut short and whose stories were often overlooked. Her name became a reminder of all the voices that never had the chance to be heard. In community centers, churches, and schools across Kansas City, her photo began to appear on posters and memorial banners. Her face, once known mostly to family and friends, had now become a public symbol of both beauty and tragedy. People began to speak her name during conversations about safety, reform, and responsibility. Her life inspired difficult but necessary dialogue. Her mother continued to travel across neighborhoods, not just as a grieving parent, but as a messenger. She met with youth programs, supported survivors, and helped other families navigate the trauma of sudden loss. Through her, Jassity's values lived on kindness, strength, and perseverance. Her death had sparked pain, but also purpose. Advocates in Missouri began linking Jassity's story with broader campaigns. Her name was mentioned during public hearings, safety reports, and community roundtables. She was no longer just a victim of a single incident. She became a symbol within a movement demanding change, demanding dignity, and demanding attention for those who were so often forgotten. Local artists painted murals in her honor, turning alley walls and abandoned buildings into vibrant spaces of memory. Poets and writers shared pieces dedicated to her legacy at spoken-word events. Every creative tribute built a lasting image of who she was and what she represented: hope in the face of hardship, love in the middle of struggle. Teachers started including her story in classroom discussions around violence and prevention. For many students, it was the first time they heard a name that felt familiar, a young woman from their own city, with dreams not unlike their own. Her life became a teaching moment, one that helped shape young minds toward empathy and awareness. Nonprofits that once focused on general violence prevention now carried a more focused message. They named scholarship programs and youth awards after her. These initiatives weren't about headlines or politics. They were about giving opportunities to those she left behind. Children like hers would now have a chance at support through the very legacy she unknowingly left. In neighborhoods where fear had long silenced hope, her story served as a form of resistance. People started opening up, sharing their own losses, creating spaces for healing. Block parties turned into peace rallies. Candlelight vigils became calls to action. Every event held in her memory reminded people that their pain had meaning and their loved ones deserved more than a quiet goodbye. For her family, honoring her became a daily act. Her daughter's drawings were filled with images of hearts and angels. Her son, though still too young to understand, would grow up surrounded by the warmth of her memory. Her clothes, her notes, and her favorite songs became sacred reminders of the life she once lived and the love she gave. Jasity Strong never set out to become a voice for others. She was a mother, a caregiver, and a dreamer trying to build a better life. But through her story, the voiceless were finally heard. Through her legacy, others found the strength to speak. And through her memory, a community learned to stand taller, love harder, and fight louder. That's a wrap on today's case. But the story doesn't stop here. There are countless voices still unheard, stories still in the shadows, and truths still waiting to be uncovered. Here at True Crime Diaries, we're dedicated to digging deep, exposing the facts, honoring the victims, and keeping their memories alive. If today's case opened your eyes, just know more powerful stories are coming. Stories that will make you pause, reflect, and ask tough questions. Hit subscribe, like this video, turn on notifications so you're always first to know when a new case drops. We post regularly, and what's coming next is something you won't want to miss. Now it's your turn. What stood out to you in today's case? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and your voice helps keep these stories alive. Until we meet again, stay informed, stay alert, stay safe. Because justice begins with truth, every voice matters. Every story deserves to be told.